All right. Good morning, everyone. We are excited to announce the second webinar in our Capital Markets Digital Transformation in Sustainable Development series. Today, our webinar is Co-Creating the Journey Towards Sustainable Development, a case study-based approach to public technology and education partnership for Mongolia's SDG realization with responsible governance. This session will explore the transformative role of collaboration between the public sector and technology leaders in capital market institutions in advancing Mongolia's sustainable development goals. Through our innovative partnerships and responsible governance, we aim to foster resilient, future-ready capital market. And I would like to welcome Dr. Katsuri Henry, renowned expert in leadership, finance, and sustainable development, and also Dr. Cloud R. Oakley, experienced strategist in public and private partnerships. So floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. Good morning, everybody. It is an honor to be here. As we get started, let's go over the agenda briefly. The agenda is case study and research-backed conversation, and we're going to be covering the topics of building public trust through connected government, and we'll talk about what is connected government and how that helps build trust, creating access through technology and how democratization of technology is going to open up the avenues for economic development. We're going to look at empowering through education, economic risk, and anti-money laundering regulations so that the empowerment through education driving economic progress is not going to bleed anything for the country. And then we're going to actually take a case study and look at how similar scenarios have been addressed through TechFides, the global tech company, in creating connected government frameworks to then drive economic development with the realization of the Sustainable Development Goals, while making sure equality and economic growth is achievable with effective change management using technology. So let's get started talking about what is connected government and why do we need to understand this? So think of connected government as a digitally connecting the government to its people, because we know from human relationships, without connection, there is no communication. Without communication, there is no relationship building, and therefore there is no opportunity to build trust. In any human relationship, the first step is connection. And technology in the modern day becomes the central nervous system through which government and its people and all the constituents within that country's framework get connected. So connected government is truly a way for digitally, through democratization of technology, connecting people and creating real-time communication, and through that building transparency and trust. And when the transparency and trust is there, then technology becomes the framework to enable real-time partnership because the communication is there. And this includes connecting agencies within the same government, right? Your transportation department, to your environmental department, to your health and human services department, to your education, to your finance ministries, right? All of those need to be connected. Your capital market should be connected. And then as the government is connected, how do we then also use that same infrastructure and connect the government to the businesses? Because business is an engine that is driving the economy, and an ecosystem needs business. The ecosystem needs universities and the education ministry and the students who are graduating, who are being prepared for business, for government, for not-for-profit, all of those, right? And then the NGOs, non-governmental organizations that are in the ecosystem that have a role to play, right? All of these organizations have a role to play, and then citizens who work in these organizations but they're also citizens. They need to engage as citizens. How do they apply for birth certificates? How do they apply for driver's license? How do they renew anything? How can we make things easy and seamless and real time? When things become accessible and communication becomes easy, then people let their guard down, people start trusting the system, and then the effort is spent on building an economic engine together instead of trying to navigate the infrastructure and the system and the red tape. And when these come together, then the financial markets get a nice dose of free-flowing blood circulation. And the financial markets are able to, the capital market within the country is then able to engage with the financial market in country, outside the country, and then global economic engagement becomes possible. So it is a continuous improvement journey that starts with connected government and then completely connects everything to the outside world. So when we start thinking about connected government, I want us to take a moment and look at what are the elements of it. So e-services are electronic services that are designed to and implemented for high quality e-services across governments, right? So registering birth, registering marriages, making sure driver's licenses are renewed, properties are recorded, all of the services we would go to a government. Even immigration, when you land in a country, do you need to fill out papers or is there electronic ways to submit all of this, right? All of these are part of e-services, and COVID reminded us that having e-services makes the government sustainable and more resilient as well. For us to provide e-services, we also need to have an infrastructure that is architecturally sound, it's risk mitigated, it's protected and meets all the government governance requirements so that government has business continuity and the government is sustainable. Therefore, the framework is sustainable to build the rest of the infrastructure and the ecosystem. The third element is interagency shared applications. Too many times in countries, every agency builds their own infrastructure that becomes cost prohibitive, becomes waste, and then now connecting each of them becomes a monumental task. And then they define data and workflows differently. Now we have to translate everything. And then there is noise and the data cannot be used and analyzed effectively real time. So we help organizations intentionally set up the infrastructure and the data structure and the data governance so that all of this is uniform and data analytics and statistics and predictive capabilities are all integrated through interagency shared application, and it becomes an economically viable, scalable, agile process. Electronic participation is the fourth element. How do we create social media-based engagement for citizens so that citizens feel seen, heard, and understood, and they can engage with their government because they are electing the government to work for them, right? Government is the representation of the people. How do we make sure they feel represented and supported? We know this from our personal lives. All we want is for somebody to hear us. And by making sure we're connecting people and they have an opportunity to be seen and heard, and they see and hear the government, then that starts creating an ecosystem of trust. The fifth element is human capital, communication, and change management. All of this cannot happen without taking the people for a journey, communicating in real time and sharing milestones and celebrating the success and telling them what to expect, and then also giving the tools to manage through change. Some governments, what they do is when they modernize and digitize, an entire swath of people are left behind and they bring outsiders, and now we've moved on. And a whole bunch of people who worked in the old way are now jobless, they don't feel relevant, and they feel left behind, and then apathy kicks in. It affects democracy, it affects economy, it affects the sustainability of the country itself. So what we tend to do is integrate this into a coordinated intentional change management to make sure the sustainability of the economic progress and the business continuity of a country and its entire ecosystem is made possible, along with capacity building so that the citizens of the country who are going to work in businesses and NGOs and government are also showing up in the modernization in a very modernized way. And the sixth element is institutional framework, standardizing the digital services software and the utilization framework and the agreements, and making sure that the investment we make goes longer for further, and we do it mindfully in an integrated way, that the framework itself meets the governance requirements. So how does connected government then create access through technology? When a government is connected, digitized, and enabled through all of these six elements, commerce becomes possible. Because we have data about the market, we have data about the economy, we have data about businesses, we have data about purchasing power and how the financial systems are working, how the money market is working. Everything is interconnected, right? Now we have data, these are fact-based. Now it becomes the engine that drives commerce. Commerce gets connected. The minute commerce and government are connected, then the communication allows us to then drive the economic engine and shape public policy in a mindful way so that entrepreneurship is possible. Individuals can enter into entrepreneurial endeavors, small businesses, innovation. All of a sudden now, everybody is contributing to the developmental equation. And education becomes accessible because technology allows people to get educated from anywhere. You don't need to leave your job to go to school. Technology-enabled education with the ability to keep your job, do what you need to do, take care of your family, and go to education, get your credentials, certification. So the connectivity infrastructure makes it possible. And equality. Equality is such an important thing. Equality doesn't mean equal. So the best way I can explain equality is, say I have a 3-month-old baby and a 3-year-old baby, and I decide I'm going to take both of them out for swimming, okay? How I put my 3-year-old into the pool is going to be very different from how I put my 3-month-old, right? My 3-year-old, I will get them ready and I will put them in the baby pool and I know they're going to play and they're going to be fine. My 3-month-old, I can't put it in the baby pool. I have to hold the baby and I have to nurture it. The baby still hasn't figured out how to swim, how to be in the water, right? That is equality, right? And we want to make sure everybody gets the opportunity to be served in a way that they have the best chance to be the best version of themselves. And anytime in a society there's equality and opportunity to thrive, then economic engine drives without any problems and friction. And when all of this happens, empowerment automatically, organically comes into play, and empowerment allows people to show up in their place of power and drive the government and the business and the NGO and the social endeavors and the entrepreneurship so that that ecosystem, that country becomes sustainable. And this kind of a system allows us to mitigate our financial risk through technology. And it is creating the accessibility and reliability to build the market confidence through blockchain, through agentic and generative AI, understanding the biases and eliminating the biases so that the artificial intelligence is bias-free and is contributing to our movement forward, giving us the opportunity to embed robotic process automation so that the human capacity is freed up to use the human intelligence, and the repetitive work can be done by the machine so that the human-machine, human technology partnership becomes a positive force for good in the end. And then it also allows us to look at data governance and meet all the GDPR and all the related requirements, as well as manage cybersecurity, because in the modern day, cybersecurity is national security. Modern day warfares are not going to be with guns and bombs. It's going to be technology. And how do we protect each nation's infrastructure and set itself up for sustainable development with the security and protection? So with that, I am going to turn this over to Dr. Oakley, who is going to walk us through a series of elements that are related to education and finance. Go ahead, Dr. Oakley.
Thank you so much, Dr. Henry. First of all, it's a pleasure having the opportunity to speak to such an august body, MASD, and you know, it's definitely a pleasure for me to come over here and to, by way of technology, and be able to address you know, some of the things that I thought that I could speak on. One of the things I know for sure is that just about 2 years ago, just about 2 years ago, August 1st to be specific, in 2004, the World Bank reclassified Mongolia from a lower middle income country to an upper middle income one, as it is based on its annual gross national income per capita. It did surpass the threshold of US $4,516, which I think at the time translated to just a little bit over 4,000 pounds sterling. So I know that as a fact, having looked at all the literature and getting a chance to speak to a few folks as well, but mainly relying on the literature, the issue is, how do we empower through education? The why is part of the most important part for us. And what we have seen is that numerous studies have certainly established a strong connection between educational attainment and economic development as a whole. When I look back at the data from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, what it says was that you know, higher education correlates with higher learning. So this whole business of empowering through education is not done through chance, but rather it is something that is rather sustainable and well researched. Wanted to spend a couple of minutes, you know, just looking at the importance of, I didn't just say importance of education, but rather the importance of quality education. And indeed, many studies established a strong connection between education attainment and economic success. And we have seen that. If you look at Singapore, for example, and Finland, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. The importance of quality education is driven by the investment in quality education, because somehow it is seen as what we call in managerial economics or managerial accounting as well, it is seen as a significant driver of economic growth. Indeed, the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, did point out to the fact that there is a strong correlation in that regard. Quality education, a recent study was done by a strategic study. They referred to themselves as CSIS. And back in December, three researchers did look keenly at the whole business of the importance of quality education. And one of the things that they mentioned was that quality education contributes to advances in science and technology. And again, if you look back at the Singapore experience, you look at Finland, there's a manifestation of just what I've just said. Investing in quality education allows a country to take advantage of the technological changes. As Dr. Henry pointed out, it's not so much labor intensive thing you're looking at. The wars she mentioned are not going to be fought by hand-to-hand combat anymore. It's not going to be fought, quite rightly she expresses it this way, it's not going to be fought by bombs and so on, but by technology. So that's why you see countries like China is investing so much in technology. And in fact, you see, even as the US tighten the number of immigrants coming into the country, really and truly, folks like countries like China are actually saying now, hey, look, you can do your doctorate here now in China. What you're going to do, we will allow you to come in with an undergraduate degree, a bachelor's degree, if it, if that's how you call it, or a baccalaureate degree, and you can go right into the PhD program. So that tells you that if you invest in quality education, you're going to be able to take advantage of the technological developments. What we also see is that when countries and citizens are highly educated and so on, we believe that it often leads to a more civilized society, possibly even less conflicts. And those are some of the things that we have seen. When I peruse the studies, what I notice is that the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, and again the OECD, of which Magnolia is well aware, they in fact have stressed they have certain common findings, and I just try to catalog a few of them for purposes of brevity and for purposes of the fact that we don't have all night to be here doing rambling over these things, but rather focusing on a few of these areas. Number one, based on those studies, we have seen that greater investment in quality education, it often leads to an increase in the country's GDP. Again, just look at Singapore. It was only a few years ago. It was way behind the last person. Today, look at where Singapore is. Look at the developments that have taken place. And all of this is because they have invested in quality education. What we also notice is that there's a stronger propensity to earn a higher income, and there is likely to be less, what we say, less social disorder. There's also a stronger, when you have folks who have benefited from quality education, what we notice is that there's greater stability in the economy. And if you look around the world and if you look at where some of the hot spots, you will see, we look at Haiti today, and without throwing any stones really, we notice that poverty was created by the lack of educational opportunities and so on. In the interest of time, I want to turn my focus now on economic risk mitigation. we look at money laundering today, and what we notice is that in terms of the types of crimes that have been created, and I'm jumping the gun a little bit just because I want to emphasize this point, that money laundering, apart from bribery and corruption, it is the highest of the list of 6 different types of crime, which I'll come back to. But I want to say here, money laundering, this is rampant throughout the world. Because one of the things we notice is that we can roughly divide this into 3 steps. 1, the money gets deposited in the bank, so we call that money placement. Then a set of complex transfers takes place to the point where what they're trying to do is to breach the audit trail. They try to breach the audit trail, make it more complex. So you have multi-layers of transactions. And therefore, as a consequence, it makes it a little more difficult to find the original source. And then the third thing is that the money comes back. It is integrated back into the legal system. So a quick example would be, here's what happened. The money comes in illegally from illegal activities. Somebody might take it and buy a house. And then to legitimize it, after you buy the house, another year down the line, it is sold. And that's how the money gets cleaned and put into the system. So we call that integration. I did mention, lastly, I did mention about the types of financial crimes that exist. And just for your purpose, I've cataloged them on the chart that is presented. I won't go through all of them, but as you can see, just as I've said before, money laundering is, apart from bribery and corruption, it is at its highest level. The recent study that was done showed that money laundering accounted for $267 billion, and it is rising. So I've put the source there just in case you want to read further. And at this time, I sincerely hope that I wasn't going too fast. I sincerely hope that you absorbed most of what I have presented, and in terms of the importance of quality education and the fact that you folks are on the right step, because here it is that you're now putting this webinar together just to hear from outsiders on how things are done. At this point in time, I want to turn over the last 15 minutes to my colleague, Dr. Henry. And so over to you, Dr. Henry.
Thank you so much, Dr. Oakley. This was amazing, and I'm so glad you emphasized the importance of mitigating the risk. And connected government allows us to have the transparency and communication to come together to learn, understand, and collaborate to mitigate the risk, because the risk is to the entire ecosystem. So thank you so much for doing an amazing job that is research-backed. Thank you.
You're most welcome.
As we look at where do we go from here, we know what connected government is. We know how technology as a central nervous system can connect the entire country and its ecosystem. We've looked at the importance of education and how education with technology and government, responsible governance, how does it help us actually build sustainable economic development? Let's look at it through an actual case study, because a lot of times theory is good, but what does it mean when the rubber meets the road, and how does this actually happen in real life? That's what we're going to look at. So as the CFO and COO, Chief Financial Officer and Chief Operations Officer of a global tech company, this is part of what we do. I am a professor at DeVry, but I also work in the world of making these kind of transformations possible. And so wanted to share with you how that journey would look like if and when we engage with a country. When we engage with a country, say, for example, we're going to do this in Mongolia, let's assume. I'm originally from Sri Lanka, so close enough. I know the similarities and the regional challenges we face. So how do we build connected government, for example, in Mongolia, and what are some of the gaps we're going to bridge? We will always start with coming in and doing an assessment to establish where we are in Mongolia and what is the baseline. It is really no different from when you get in your car and you put in the GPS where you want to go. What does the GPS do first? It calibrates where you are at that moment. And then from that calibration, it gives you ways to get to your destination. And as you're driving, it will course correct if there are accidents or traffic jams or anything else, right? So a journey for a country like Mongolia or Sri Lanka is same. We first start with where is the baseline, where are we today? And an assessment allows us to see where we are, do a diagnostics. Then through that process, we look at where do we want to go, and to go there, where we currently are, where are the gaps, and how do we fill those gaps in order to take that journey? So we identify the gaps, we develop the roadmap. None of this is done in a vacuum. It is always done in collaboration and partnership with the government we're working with. So we will work with everybody, functional entity by functional entity, ministry by ministry. We will look at this and look at what does the development roadmap look like? And then how does that get integrated for each of these government entities so that those entities themselves are interconnected for a singularly connected government of Mongolia? And then we look at what does these milestones look like? What are the success points? And how long is it going to take to deliver it? What are the resources and support we need within the government to make this happen? And then how do we take this journey? And we put some measurable benchmarks and success key indicators, and then we drive it as a continuously improving process, taking the agencies along for the journey. We don't believe in doing it and saying, here, now do you take and run with it? No, we take you for the journey so that you have already experienced what that journey looks like. Therefore, you are resilient and you can navigate it, and we're always there to support. But the key is making this development sustainable, meaning it is organic, and the country and the government and its people take the journey, and we facilitate the journey for the good of the country, because ultimately it is your economic development and your sustainability that we are driving. And when we look at how we do this, we truly look at it as technology partner, government, university ecosystem, because technology alone cannot sit in a vacuum. It has to support, enable, and bring about the change in the government infrastructure and through the government for the ecosystem. And that also requires education for everybody. So a university partnership or multi-university partnerships become mission critical, right? You may have heard this saying, if you want to do fast, do it alone. If you want to go further, longer, and remain sustainable, then go with the people who are going to support that journey, right? So a technology partner, government, university ecosystem is truly a sustainable ecosystem. And then through connected government, then we bring in businesses and not-for-profits and everybody else into the mix. Now, artificial intelligence and digital transformation become tools in making this possible, because the tools allow us to take the repetitive work and do it in a reliable, consistent way so that work can be accomplished and the human capacity is freed up to do the human intelligence-based work, while the technology does the technology intelligence-driven work, so that together the ecosystem of technology and the human leading the technology are compatible and sustainable. And so developing the human intelligence and creating impact to lead change and giving the tools to the humans in this process to bring about sustainable change is mission critical for us when we drive connected government-based economic development change. One of the byproducts of all of this is equality. When democratization of technology and education happens, everybody is able to show up in their power and make an impact with the gifts that each one is uniquely born into. And research shows that anytime there is intrasexual competition, meaning there are only 2 jobs in any organization for women or 2 jobs for any particular category, then there is so much competition for which 2 people are going to get, there is never a progress. Research shows that intrasexual competition is detrimental for economic development and viable, sustainable progress. So education and technology democratization allows equality to take place. Therefore, these negative competitive elements are removed and collaboration and a sense of abundance kicks in. And now we are able to build the smallest building block, which is a sustainable family, and then sustainable communities, society, all the way to a sustainable nation. And without these individual building blocks, without the technology and education sitting side by side with government driving that responsible governance, this is not possible. Think of this as a 3-legged stool, right? If any one leg is shorter or weaker or broken, you can't use the stool. It's no longer a stool. So education, technology, and government need to be equally strong to create a viable framework for the ecosystem to function. And it then creates a equality-based environment where everybody can show up in their strength, in their power to build something that is going to last. And as TechFides, when we go and work with countries, when we come into Mongolia, for example, and we're working on this, we're going to look at what are the key SDGs that you're trying to drive. Education is going to increase the opportunity for creating employment. It is going to eliminate poverty. It is going to create opportunities for women's empowerment. When we build sustainable ecosystems and people are educated and they understand, they start realizing, you know what, if I harm my environment, then it creates negative, toxic treatment in my environment where my government, my business, my family, all of it is not going to be sustainable. So if I'm polluting the water and I'm polluting the air, then the quality of life in terms of health and wellness is going to suffer. Therefore, we're going to spend so much money trying to be healthy, and the money we make through education and employment is not going to drive economic progress. It is going to just go to pay more bills. So we start thinking about the concept of triple bottom line, meaning for the economy to succeed and grow financially, we need social sustainability. And for society to be sustainable, we need environmental sustainability, right? So the triple bottom line is environmental sustainability, societal sustainability, economic sustainability. And they are all interrelated. And when we come from that mindset, then we are going to be able to intentionally go after these SDGs and make sure that we are incrementally driving progress in these areas so that little by little we lift the bar and then we grow progressively and we grow together. This is how we are able to start with technology, overlay education in partnership with governments to build connected government, to then drive the outcome we need so that every nation has the opportunity to build its own wealth, which is what capitalism was supposed to be, right? So as a capital markets group, you are driving the financial engine for the country and the economy. Why don't we do it in a very systematic way with the understanding of how the entire ecosystem is connected and take a systems perspective on how this can be made possible. So how does Mongolia move forward? We are doing the first step already. You are doing the first step already. You have realized you need to learn, you need to understand, you need to take this shared journey of learning and expanding your thinking, which is how we got invited to be here. Dr. Oakley and I are immensely grateful for the opportunity to talk to you. And we congratulate you for taking this first step. Because knowing that you need to learn, knowing that you need to grow, knowing that you need to craft a path that is uniquely Mongolia, that is the first step. And now we get to collaborate and figure out how do we take that human intelligence and your desire and the will and the commitment to make that change, and how do we orchestrate that change in a systematic way, in a meaningful way, in a measurable way, so that we do this thoughtfully and responsibly with good governance, so that individuals, organizations, government, the whole nation can thrive. So with that, I am going to open up for any questions.
All right. Those who wish to ask any question, please raise your hand, and then I will enable your mic to ask any questions. Is anyone? I've seen many participants here, but shy to ask any questions. So I have one question, Dr. Henry.
Okay.
I really like the approach that 5 steps, like first of all, assessments and ID the gaps and developing the roadmap and implementing the roadmap and with the milestones and measure and manage and continuous improvement, right? So how long does it take to make those implement those kind of goals to size of Mongolia? And you have intensive experience in the emerging markets, right? So
yes,
let's say, how long does it take, the whole ordeal?
So assessment will take a good 6 to 8 months at least, depending on how big and complex government infrastructure is. Doing the due diligence and the assessment right is key, right? It's like you aim 10 times before you pull the trigger, because after you pull the trigger, you can't go back and figure out if you aimed at the right person, right?
Yes.
So we want to make sure the assessment as a foundational process is done right. And that requires a commitment from every government agency. And we do the assessment for every government agency because different agencies are in different places.
Right.
And that is normal. That is not good, bad, or indifferent. It just is. So understanding that without any guilt or ill will and making sure we do that right is the starting point. Then we look at, of these, here are the things we can do for everybody. And then here are what are your priorities you want to go after? And then we can prioritize and do this in a way it is meaningful for the Mongolian government, right? So different countries are in different places for different services within the government, and priorities are different, right? If we were in the middle of COVID, health and human services and containing a pandemic would have been a priority. Now it looks like you're building the economic engine and creating the capital markets. So the financial piece and the governance of the financial piece and the data structure and the ability to understand the data governance and use data to make real-time decisions and course corrections may be a priority. So we look at what is the priority. So if you decide data and data governance and integrated data for decision making to drive this whole ecosystem engine to make the capital market functional, then that's where we start. Because we can't do all of it at the same time. We have to pick and choose based on what your priorities are. And then we will work with you in a responsible way and say, okay, this needs to go up to a certain point before we can layer some of those other things. And then where is the right place to bring in the education partner to then start training people to understand what are data definitions? Why is this important? Sometimes we do that as part of change management because the people who are setting up the architecture and the data definition should be the ones teaching it, right? So we have to figure out what is the right way to plug and play and how do we build a true reliable ecosystem. And sometimes it's best to get the local universities involved. If we got the local universities involved, then we're getting the professors involved, we can get the students involved, we can create internships. There are so many different ways we can build capacity as we do this. Because ultimately the goal is not only take you on that journey, but take you on that journey at the end of it. If we built the car, you all need to be able to drive that car too. You shouldn't have to hire a chauffeur every time you want to go somewhere. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. So assessment takes 6 to 8 months, right?
Yeah.
And then we need to get everyone involved. So, yep.
Yeah.
All right. Dr. Cloud Oakley, you raised your hand?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, I did. I did want to say here, first of all, I congratulate Dr. Henry for a well thought out process for your association. And I also want to make a point that while education is a powerful tool for enhancing economic success and well-being, addressing what I call the underlying social and economic inequalities is also crucial to ensure that the benefits of education are accessible to all. Okay? The benefits of quality education are accessible to all. And I want to underline quality education in that respect. Thank you.
Beautifully said. Thank you.
All right. I guess we're gonna do a lot more work in the coming months. Let's focus on Mongolian connectivity.
There you
That's
go.
right. That's right.
All right. Well, I don't see any more hands, so I'd like to close the webinar. So as we conclude today's insightful session, we extend our deepest gratitude to our speakers, Dr. Katsuri Henry and Dr. Cloud R. Oakley, for sharing their invaluable expertise and perspectives. Your contributions have provided us with a deeper understanding of how public technology education partnerships can drive our Mongolian sustainable development goals forward through responsible governance. The special thanks to all participants for joining us and engaging in this important discussion. Your involvement is the key to fostering more resilient, innovative, and sustainable capital markets. So stay tuned for our next session in the Capital Markets Digital Transformation and Sustainable Development series, where we will continue to explore cutting-edge solutions and collaborative strategies to shaping the future. Until then, let's continue working together towards sustainable and thriving financial ecosystem in Mongolia. Thank you.
Thank you too.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much. It
Thank
was
you
an
very
honor.
much for inviting us. It's an honor.